Alright, we have a empty door frame. Apart from the mirror, that's only 3 nuts. But this whole, so you've got the door panel, and once you take the door panel, there is another panel that holds the entire window mechanism. So this is all just run off those cables. So I had to pull the motor off and everything, and couldn't even get this panel out without removing the door lock. And this part here is what your outside handle attaches to. So you can see, let's take the glass out, which is sitting over there at the moment, and the speaker. Talk about the rigmarole. So yeah, it's a complex little thing, isn't it? If I were to use these, I'd have to straighten those, because the Willys is of course getting flat glass. The angle of that, I presume, matches the angle of there, so the glass goes up. Of course I won't be using any of that because that's all curved and totally wrong design anyway. So the investigation continues of what would be possible. So I'd have to lean, it's funny, so often they lean them forward when they're doing, say, a 50s custom. It might look, I'm not sure how it would look leaning back a few degrees. Now, it might seem a strange thing to start on, but if I'm going to go to the effort of using these door frames, at least the inner part of it, then this has to be straight, because my windows won't be going up and down like it does on this door, and that's 17 degrees. You can visibly see when I've got this square to the bottom how much is tilted over. Now I don't know, I have to move exactly, both to keep tension in these cables, they both have to move this way, and then the bottoms have to also become level because they're currently offset. The carriage on here is not offset, as in from the wheel to the bottom of the carriage that carries the glass up and down. So I'm going to have a play with, at least see if I can get the alignment of this straight, and then I'll see if I can straighten these out, and then we'll go from there and see just what's possible. There's you've got to look at what might be the most difficult thing first. If you can't solve that, then what's the point of continuing with the other things? So I'm going to have a play and just see how far I get. I'd be surprised if I can get it all, because you can see how much this has to come that way, but you know, I don't have any problems cutting into this plastic to get the cable a free run, so we'll just see. Right, I couldn't hold it and show it because the cable tension is so great without any mounting points yet, but needless to say, I can get them sitting exactly 90 degrees to each other. The carriage ends up a little bit weird because it was obviously designed to go like this. So now that I'm through that part of it, I've got to try and see if I can get that curve out. So it's quite substantial, because now I'm looking for something. Here we go. So it sits like that. You can see that's a massive curve on that. Alright, I've started just as a sort of proof of concept. And so what I first did is I ran a cutting disc right along that bottom edge there, as well as across there, and also grinding out that side shape, because there's no point flattening this, because then you can't shrink it enough so it will start distorting it left to right, and I don't want any, this track has to be perfectly straight. So you can see how I've done that on this side, and I've just tapped that down, and I just started at this end. You can see already it's getting flatter by hammering into the corner with a bolster like that to stretch that, and once this side's down, I'll do it against that edge here. So I'm about to cut the other side, and then I'll really stretch the bottom of this flange more than this. This will pull straight pretty well, but really got to get the pressure in the bottom here, not up here, only down the lower part of this vertical flange, and that will slowly straighten it out. And then I've got to make sure it doesn't go wavy either way, especially once this starts getting welded. So that's what I'm up to so far, and I'll start doing the other end. Alright. It would have been much easier if I could do two folds that close to each other. But the problem is that even though I've got a folder, you can see how much wider that is. And so, especially the bigger, more heavy duty the folder is, the less chance you've got of doing it. So it's a lot of work to do it by hand, so it's probably just as time consuming to do it this way. So as you can see, this way, it's all nice and straight again. One of the problems you do face is because it was designed with a curve, when you flatten that down, it also curved it back from straight the other way, but I was able to get that straight as well. So you can see a little bit of shrinking on that very edge here, and then expanding along this edge here just to bend that whole lot out. That's where one of those deep throat shrinkers where you could get in and over the top of something like this. I haven't got that capability here. Just quickly, MIG welder. There's a place for a MIG and there's a place for a TIG, and with dirty galvanised steel like this, I'd rather use a MIG, and one side had a bit of gap. But yeah, that gives you an idea. Nothing's been done to this yet, and that's the penetration on the back side. So these edge corners I put over a bit of copper to being able to weld those easily right to the very edge, otherwise you tend to burn it away. Anyway, we're looking pretty good. Alright, we've just cleaned up the welds. Didn't need a lot of stretching to straighten it back out again, but you see it back to back. You can see how much it's changed, and for the other side you can see the dramatic difference in this rail here, which is what the guide runs on, from that curved piece to this one here. So now I've got to repeat that 5 more times. Alright, another step. It was fiddly. So you can see the angle that these are on before. So here's another mounting hole, and there's the other one there. So these are twisted like that on that angle. I've stood them up. So that gives you, and now it all just works beautifully. So really happy with that. So now I can think about removing the outside of this door skin, so I can see how much I can thin the outside of the door with without interfering with anything. So everything has to go back in the door, and then I can see how much clearance. So the first thing will go is that's already 50 mil or 2 inches that I can shave the door down. I have no need for those, and nor would it work with the new door skin from the extended door skin from the Willys. Okie dokie. Gee, it was actually hard for me to scribe that line. This door had no damage, not even a paint scratch. So to grab a scribe and go and then cut along there. It was actually quite hard. As you can see, I've de-skinned the bottom half. If you're wondering how I removed it, all I did is use my angle grinder with a grinding disc, not a flap disc or anything like that, just a grinding disc, and you just grind along the edge here until you just start seeing a line appear, which means you have ground through the fold. And then I just put a seam splitter in there and just popped it off. So this had no spot welders at all. It just had a bit of some sort of sealant, but as you can see, water's obviously being trapped in there, and you can see a little bit of surface rust starting there already. Anyway, lots of proofing out still to be. I have still no idea if this will work or not, but I've at least gone past the fact that I can straighten the window tracks and put them in the vertical position. So that's one step further, but this is the door lock and everything, and this is the inside of the door lock that I have to clear the handle bolts to. So you can see I need to put all that back in place. The inside trim doesn't matter. That's got nothing to do with where I'm trying to clear it. And you can see what's left of the door skin. So, yeah, oh well, another step forward. Nothing that can't be overcome yet. Just keep proving out the concept. Destruction. I'm slimming Elvira's waist. Going for that hourglass, you see. So I put it on a radical diet. As you can see, the outer skin has already been torn off, and then this is the inner one. And so that width there that you can see is all extra I'm gaining, and then I'm moving the door inwards. So rather than just plastic being on the inside, I'm moving the metal side of the door inwards, so I've got structural enough structural width to hold it all in. And as you can see, this is about to come off. Elvira's getting a diet. Here, it gives you a better idea of this. All this I'm removing so I can move the door in to the back of this instead. It's funny that the part that everyone sees in the door jamb is actually just a really thin body sheet metal thickness skin, and it's really flimsy. It has no actual structural strength, but it just spot welds over the top. The actual structural strength is in this bit here, and this is only 1.2 millimeters thick, which is what, 14 gauge, and that's got some of the reinforcing. Just been trying different techniques because I've been doing hundreds of spot welds. So I've tried the mini hole saw with a plunging center, and they can be a bit fragile and break, and I also find keeping them on center can be a problem. I end up drilling a small pilot hole through just so the centering pin, which sort of defeats the purpose of it, doesn't go astray. I've also tried just using an angle grinder and just grinding over the top, but you end up, it's quite a big area that you're cutting through. The finger sander, as I notice, is popular at the moment, but I don't want to go through that many belts. I'm using this burr on my die grinder and just going around the edge of the spot weld until it's level, because generally I find on the thin metal, as you can see, one here hasn't been done yet, it's sunk in almost the thickness of this thin metal on the outside. So I grind around the outside like here, see here? And I go around the outside until I'm basically level or just below the actual spot weld itself. And then I come in with a a seam splitter. So this is a seam splitter. You can see it's got a different edges. This is a box of 3, so it's got a right angle one and one with that cutting edge on both sides. And they'll come in and hammer that in and break it free. So you can see this one's already coming apart here that I've already welded. So when you're hammering, that just all cuts right through it. And you might have to come from one side and then the other and pop it free. And so far I've found that the easiest to gauge how far to go down without damaging. You can see the metal that we can show on the other side. So I use this technique here first. See that? It's all I've done is taking the little bit of the spot weld left off with a flap disc, and it's just left a little indentation from the original spot weld, but none of it's gone into the parent metal. That's the first time I'd be able to do all of this. Unlike, you can see what happens here. I've tried to use the grinder technique, and you can see where I've gone too deep in places and then it's torn and it's made a mess. But here, using the die grinder, look at that. That's not a bad effort. So at the moment, that's my go-to method. So I thought I'd share that. And onwards. And there you can see it all cleaned up. No gouges. There's a little dent from the spot weld centre itself, which I never ground in the first place. So it cleans up well. So this is what I do when the piece I'm removing is not going to be used again, because otherwise you end up with quite a big hole if you were trying to weld that back on later. So for instance here I've just used a cobalt drill because it's the weld hardened, so a conventional high-speed steel drill tends to blunt very quickly drilling out spot welds. So I just used in this case a 7mm, which is the size of the spot weld, and I just punch all the way through because in this case there'll be a new piece backing onto there and I can just plug weld from the back through those holes. I wish I'd thought about that on the other side, but at that time I didn't know what I was going to build on this side of it.